Hello and welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host, Allison K. Dagny, and today I am chatting with a very special guest who I know you guys are going to absolutely love. Her name is Tina Joy. And Tina, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to ask you to share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll lead into the conversation there.
Wonderful. Allison, thank you so much for letting me be here today. I'm so excited. I am a matchmaker. I'm a VIP matchmaker, recently promoted. So obviously, I've been pretty excited about that. That's an absolute honor to be recognized for specific skills that I have. And I've been a matchmaker for about, I don't know, probably about 6 years now. But I started, well, I've been in acting. I'm a working actress as well. And I've always had a strong passion for studying human behavior and art and connection. And so it was just sort of a natural transition into becoming a matchmaker. But it was kind of funny how it all manifested in itself anyways, because it really did just kind of start with imagination and a dream. Like I never intended to become a matchmaker, but now I'm also a certified life coach and certified dating coach. So it's just kind of fun how, like, if you set your imagination to anything, like you can create it. So,
That is amazing and interesting how you just said like it was just things that you enjoyed and things that you're really interested, like human behavior and things like that, but it just manifested into your reality. And here you are, 6 years later, a VIP matchmaker, which congratulations, because that's
thank
really
you.
exciting.
I
So,
know,
yeah,
it's so crazy.
so cool. So people might be wondering, okay, well, okay, Allison, why do you have a matchmaker on today? And there is a really good reason for this because Tina and I have had some conversations about what dating looks like. And I know a lot of people in my audience have been out of emotionally abusive relationships. They've experienced narcissism. They're trying to do the dating thing. Maybe they're not trying to do the dating thing. And you have a perspective that a lot of people don't have. And so I really wanted to bring you on today to show people a little bit more like peel back the curtain about what's out there. Like, what does it look like since you do have this experience? And then help shed some light on things that maybe they don't know. And I love that you have such like an invested background in this because some people I think are just scared to death. Like, especially if you've been hurt by somebody, you've been emotionally abused for any stretch of time, it's like scary to get out there. Like, oh my gosh. So, I want your perspective, but I think first, the most important thing I think I'd like to talk about is before somebody does jump back into a relationship like that, what do you think? Like, what is your opinion? Kind of just tell us what is your advice? What is your thoughts about that?
Well, just to sort of start it off, I do have a background. I'm trauma informed, right? And I think when it comes to dating and relationships after abuse, it's really important to keep in mind that there is no rush, right? No rush to jump into a new relationship, no rush to jump into dating, because oftentimes when you're moving through this, your whole life is restructuring. You're not just looking at your romantic relationships or the choices or ex those experiences. It's also impacting how you look at your family relationships and dynamics, your professional relationships, right? So depending on where you are in that journey is going to be kind of how much you want to take on. Like maybe you're unpacking these dynamics that you have in friendships and realizing there's some sort of crossover with the people that you've dated that have violated your boundaries or, made challenged your identity in a way that is making you feel not safe in this moment. So I feel like those are really important distinctions to make as we move forward into dating because no matter what we do, no matter whether we've had a abusive relationship or whether we haven't, dating is going to trigger you. It's going to draw up those insecurities. It's going to challenge you. It's a really fascinating conversation to have because when abuse has happened, there's a there's a when abuse has happened, we often will be a little bit more cautious, right? And there's that chance for hypervigilance. But the good news is that everyone's experiencing that hypervigilance and, on high alert for what's a red flag and what isn't. And I don't know how to tie that into a neat little button there, but because I was going somewhere else and then my brain hijacked itself.
That's okay. Well, you like loved, I mean, you were talking about like how it does impact everything. And regardless, like you're gonna get triggered no matter what. But I love this. I never even thought about this too. Like sometimes we just think it's just us that, oh, we gotta watch out for red flags. Everybody out there is trying to like achieve something. They're trying to protect themselves too. You know, everybody's looking for not just the dating, but they're aware. They have that hypervigilance, like you said.
Right. And, obviously, for the most part, I'm assuming that we're going to be somewhere in our 30s dating, right? And older. So this isn't our first time we've fallen in love. So we all have a level of baggage and fear that comes into the game itself, as well as the idea of what it should look like.
Mm.
When we step forward into dating with the idea of what it should look like based off of society or the books we've read or the TikToks we've watched or even our own personal experiences, I think that's when we create problems that don't necessarily need to be there. And dating becomes, I don't want to say easier because that's not the word, but it becomes more manageable when we realize there is a high level of uncertainty that comes into the process. And when we realize that the natural inclination is to try to control that because that will give us the illusion of safety.
Wow.
And that's the majority of parties.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is really interesting because when we're talking about like, okay, I was in an abusive relationship and now I'm ready to move out into the world and maybe start dating or talking to people or whatever that. But what you just said was this idea of what it should look like. I think that trips up a lot of people because I can even remember when I was little, like princess stories and all of these, like The Notebook and the Titanic, like what these love stories are supposed to be like, is really disillusioning us.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it's kind of scary though, because like you think you have this like idea about what the ideal, and I'm not saying you shouldn't like manifest your ideal partner or have expectations or standards. Like I'm not saying that at all, but I really love this this phrase about like what should it look like. So I guess my question to you is like, how do you advise people then, you know, when maybe they don't have realistic expectations or maybe they're without like also lowering your standards?
Right. So, everything in general, just to preface this so that we're aware of it, is always going to be situational, right? So we have to keep that in mind. Nothing I will ever say will ever blanket any situation, but it's a good guide. It's like a compass, right? Like if I have a ship and I can give you a compass, I can give you some kind of direction. Um, now, now I forgot because what was the question again? It was,
Like if like what should it look like is the question originally. So what does that mean then if like you want to have expectations but you also don't want to be like too
so I,
specific?
I am a, I am a strong I don't want to say I challenge the term and I'm very big on words. I challenge the use of expectations. I
Mm.
support the use of standards because I believe they are two distinct
Mm.
lenses, right?
Okay.
Expectations is going to say like this is how I expect you to show up to serve me. That's in short, right?
Yep.
That's not how relationships work. Relationships, one of my favorite quotes is that love is the act of sacrificing the ego on the altar time and time again, right? So for me, when I say that quote, I don't think expectations. I think like, where is my ego getting in the way and telling stories that is disruptive to the connection? Or disruptive or creating a lens of an individual that they didn't even subscribe to, but it's because of my traumas, my narratives, my fears, right? So that's why I'm not a fan of the word expectations. Standards now, though, standards is our own internal boundaries, right? So that's us saying, like, this is what I have to do for myself in order to show up as my best self.
Okay.
In other words, if I feel safer with someone who obviously this is pretty common for the majority of people. I feel safer when someone's taking the initiative and contacting me consistently and letting me know that they're interested in me. That can become a standard when it's communicated. It's like, this is how I feel safe. This is how I feel like you're attracted to me, right? Now it's different when we project it and we're like, you have to do this. That's when
Yeah.
it's an expectation. You have to call me. You have to do
Right.
this. If you wanted to, you would. Like,
Mm.
that is going to create unnecessary conflict, and so all these other things kind of start to steam or like snowball from
Hmm.
there, right? So I would say beginning with that when we jump into dating and relationships is becoming really aware of the distinction between expectations and standards. And to really, if I want to just eradicate even that terminology, I would say just become really aware of your ego. Become really
Mm.
aware of when you feel like being right is more important than being connected, because you don't have to date someone that you don't feel safe with, but you also don't have to fight to be right. How you feel about the experience in itself is enough. It doesn't need to be explained. It doesn't need to be justified. It doesn't need to be shared, especially as you're rebuilding your identity, right? When you're rebuilding your identity and getting into the dating field, we want you to be sovereign. We want you to not seek validation outside of yourself. We want you to understand your body and signals on such a deep intrinsic level that you don't need to outsource any of yourself to anybody else.
Wow. I mean, I just love all these nuggets of truth that you just, and these little bombs that you drop. Like, is it more, is it better to be right versus being connected, right? I love that. You talked about the ego and distinguishing between expectations and standards. These are just very powerful pieces of what you said. The next thought that I have, though, which I think naturally flows into this about the ego, is when you've been wounded, right, and you've experienced emotional trauma or, betrayal or like whatever, like all men are bad or all women are bad, like whatever, right? You've experienced these things. How do you like, because the ego is a huge piece of this, right? It is. Anybody who's done work with that knows. But how do you tell the difference between the challenges from the old relationship that is because your ego keeps getting in the way, and when you're in the new relationship and they're like just getting activated, these stories of like, oh no, like this is the same thing, and oh my gosh, I have to protect myself, and da da da. Like, how do you do that either personally or advise other people to do that to kind of distinguish them?
That's such a great question. And again, it's multi-layered, but when you first ask me about the ego, the first thing I say, like in general, I would blanket this beginning as it's the difference between expansion and contraction.
Mm.
If you're in an experience where you're constantly feeling like there's contraction, you're tightening up, you're pulling back, everything you try to discuss gets shut down. Okay, don't pass go. But if you're in an experience where there's expansion, there's curiosity, even if it's imperfect, because it will be imperfect oftentimes, right? Like dating's going to be messy, like falling in love is not perfect. You have to be ready to take that on and adopt that. But is there expansion? Is there understanding? Is there effort in even attempting to show up for one another, right? Because again, not all of us are highly articulate with our emotions, right? Like
Yep.
that, the emotional body and the intellect are two separate things until we start to unify them, integrate them, and have them become whole, right? So, that's my biggest thing that I say to my clients is, do you feel it would be, do you feel like this is a place where you are expanding or contracting? We
Mm.
start there and then we go through the other narratives, because it's so easy to demonize another individual. I mean, I am a huge fan of being petty, like I used to be, until I started doing deep work. And I joke and I say, like, I really miss it, like I really miss being petty. Like it was so fun, gossiping was so much fun, speaking poorly, judging people, criticizing people, like that. I loved doing those things,
Mhm.
like, and I have a background in comedy. Of course, like I have a highly observant, like I observe things with,
Yeah.
precision. But as I healed and grew and evolved, I realized that was actually holding me back, and it was holding back everyone in my life. So there was no way I was ever going to be able to have a healthy relationship if I imprisoned both myself and others in these kinds of dynamics. There's a risk that comes in play with relationships, with love, with connection. And part of that is faith. And it's faith in another person that they are not out to hurt you, that they don't mean you ill will. It's not ignorance, right? But it's discernment.
Mhm.
And it's, once again, it's practicing trust. And when you've come from abuse, that has definitely had violations. But it is not up to everyone else to do that work for you. You have to be on it. You have to do that. You have to be on the journey. You have to do that work. And you do, I think, when you have had abuse, you are more responsible in articulating your own internal experiences and challenges to a person like that or that you're in love with or your friends, right? Like it becomes your job to learn how to say, look, like, here's how I'm feeling right now. My heart is racing. I'm questioning whether this is a safe place for me because we do have to, we have to heal those trust wounds, but they can't be healed in the dark. They have to be brought to light and we have to risk other people seeing us. So I
Wow.
don't know if I closed that loop off,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling about that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And what I kind of take away from this too is that like it's not as much about like knowing all the red flags and buying all the books so you can identify all the red flags and is this a red flag or is this a red flag, right?
Oh,
It's
you'll
more about
always find those red
I
flags.
know. It's just checking in with yourself, like you said, and I love the two words you use, expansion versus contraction. Everybody can know, everybody knows what that feels like. Expansion feels free, it feels calm, it feels stable, right? The contraction is like, oh, like you might even have a physical like nervous system response to the contraction. So it's really just and again, that's trust. Like not only trusting the other person, but trusting you, trusting your radar as well. Don't you
Most
think?
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prioritizing that understanding that it really all starts with you.
Mhm.
Because even though we have, movies have said like love is about another person, my opinion, it's not. And the more that you heal and the more that you're on your journey, you realize this is actually an inside job and I'm building a safer and healthier relationship with myself. And when I do that, then everything else flows into place. It magnetizes, I create more abundance, right? But definitely if you can't trust yourself, how will you ever be able to trust someone else? If you can't feel safe within yourself, how do you start to feel safe with others? And again, that doesn't mean that there isn't interdependence or, teamwork, right? Like that exists. But again, if you can't articulate that, if you don't know how to bring it to light, no one else can walk home with you.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so because of that part, my first thought is because some people might think this, like, and I have my own opinions about this, but I'm curious what yours are. What about people who don't have that full self-trust or they don't have that full self-love yet? Like, does that mean they have to avoid dating before they can, like actually, they have to get into their own like space and their mind and do the healing work and all the stuff before they can actually start dating? What do you think? If you've been listening to this podcast and something in you keeps nodding along week after week, well, that's not random. It's your intuition nudging you that there's something deeper here for you. I offer a free root cause call to help you uncover what's really behind your subconscious patterns, the self doubt, the overthinking, the emotional pain that really never lets go. And in this private one on one call, I help you get clarity on the real reason that you're stuck and what your next best steps forward could look like, whether that's with me or another path that fits you better. So, if my episodes speak to your soul, there's probably a reason. Follow the nudge, and you can schedule your free root cause call with me in the show notes. And now we'll get back to your episode.
I think it's a great question to ask ourselves to say, why do we want to date in the first place, right? Less about like, am I ready to date? Because no one's ever ready. They think they are, and they're usually not, right? Just like you're probably not ready to have kids, or get married, right? Or take on other responsibilities. So I think it's more important to say, like, why do I want to date? Okay, now here's an example. Why do I want to date? Well, because I want to be in love, I want to feel love. Okay, so do you believe that love only comes from dating? Now, the correct answer is no, right? We know that love does not just come from dating. We know love is all around us, it's an abundance, right? Me personally, I find love to be the key ingredient to life itself, right? And what I witness is anyone who has given up on love, who rejects it, who's been so wounded that they say they don't need it, there's a missing spark. And they know that even if they can't answer that to themselves, right? So I would say that first and foremost, love is worth the resistance. Love is worth the discomfort. And I don't even mean with someone else. I mean the experience of love within yourself, right? So I would start once again, as I mentioned, with asking yourself, why do you want to date? Because I find that when I ask this question to my clients, it's very rarely just about love. Once we say it's about love and we go and I go into that exploration of, well, okay, well, what is love? What is the meaning of love? Where can you find love elsewhere? Where does it exist within yourself? And we start using those high quality questions and we bring it back to you. We discover it's actually not about another person. You just want to experience love. You want to experience safety. You want to experience trust. You want to experience growth, right? The idea of what dating is so much larger than we've allowed ourselves um to experience. So, and then if it's now, if it is about the love, I would say once again, then find it in the small places, find it in the small moments of joy, find it in the shared connections with others before you start looking for it in dating, before you start, experience it in dating. Really train your brain to see love in like how the rain falls and feeds the world and how your friends call you and remember something small about you, or how you see two people holding hands that are older and you wonder like how many conflicts they may have had or how many times they had to forgive each other. Like develop that curiosity, develop that narrative and that strength that keeps you going. I believe in love and I believe that it is the source of life. And so I
Mm,
will continue to fight for it.
wow.
That feels a little abstract, but I mean, I do think that the more that you see it in your everyday world, the better off you'll be in your dating, because then the less likely you're looking for the mistakes, you're looking for the red flags. Because by nature, the one thing that I tell my clients too, I'm like, just know, like the good news is you're always going to disappoint someone and someone's always going to disappoint you. So don't worry about looking for red flags, just do your best to embrace the discomfort with faith again and know what you want. If you want love, then let's stick to that. Let's not focus on what the other person's doing or could be doing or what can happen 5 years from now. We don't even know if we'll get 5 years from now.
Yeah, you're right. I love that this question has come up because I work with a lot of people who struggle with loneliness after a breakup or after a divorce. And a lot of things that come up is that they just want to squash the loneliness. And so they want to date or they want a partner. And I've asked this question to them before, like, why? Like what is the reason? And a lot of times, what I have noticed at least is that the subconscious mind is holding on to a lot of things that make them believe they can't do life on their own, or they have to have somebody, or keeping up with societal expectations, or what will other people think about me. So I love how you're saying like training your brain too, because this is part of that. Like not only knowing what it is, like what you want, but why you want it versus just like blindly running into the dating world just because it's like what people do or it's time or right? Like I think it's intentional, like doing things with intention versus just randomly.
Right. Like there's a lot of unconscious dating, and that's where the rewounding or the wounding either perpetuates or begins, right? So the more conscious we can become of the process, the more we'll experience that freedom, and then we become better masters of ourselves, right? Like I look at relationships as another program that as you mentioned earlier, was falsely sold to us, right? And so I think too, as we evolve as a society, and I think we're moving out of the dark ages in dating and how we speak about our feelings and whatnot. But as we evolve, we discover that like we don't want to be held to these rigid ideas of what love or relationships should look like. It's not working for us. And we're even seeing the data in matchmaking because, we have meetings all the time. We go over all the paperwork, everything. We're seeing in our data, there is a huge shift towards consciousness, intentional dating, authenticity, transparency. And these were things that we didn't explore maybe 10, 20 years ago at the rate at which we're doing it now.
That's really interesting. So statistics really like that it's becoming so much more like prevalent to do it this way versus how, and I don't know why that would be. I don't know if you have any like any thoughts of why that's happening.
Mine would be more spiritual when I think about
Mhm.
it. When I sit here and I ask myself, like, what is this shift? It's because, for me personally, I think it's a spiritual thing because it's like, I do look at the earth as a living entity. So I believe we are this ecosystem within it. And again, I'm a cautious idealist. So I'm always going to believe that good will win, love will win, even if I can see the patterns and be like, well, you know, there's a natural resistance and that's normal to life too, like paradox and opposites. Like these things still have to exist for us to even be able to continue growing anyways, because we have to be able to observe our opposites before we even know where we want to go to next, right? So, but I feel like for so long we've lived in the dark, we've lived, with masculine, feminine being told what is masculine and feminine, right? And so now we're just like exhausted by it. We're like, that doesn't define me, and it also doesn't help me understand myself or even describe me. And so I personally feel like this evolution is happening because energetically, the earth is like, I have to balance this out because it's time for me to grow. And so I always see things in that fashion, right? Now, I still observe the material world and I work with it, but I think on that energetic level, it's just time. And I think that's why we also see like some of the data kind of showing like the increase in the male loneliness epidemic, which is also still it's paralleling the hypergamy thing too. So what I've been kind of researching recently, and there's no definitive, I can't really say anything definitively about this, but what I've just been researching is we talked a lot about male epidemic loneliness, and then we've seen the rise in hypergamy content. And finally, we're starting to see like, oh, actually, these are the two groups together that are
Mhm.
starting to shift into their own world of consciousness, while the others who are becoming more evolved in terms of intention and whatnot, they're like we're seeing this divide, right? So those people who want to have the narratives that either men or women are not good and you can't find what you're looking for, they'll be in their own group.
Mhm.
And the rest of us that are focused on love and growth and evolution are going to be experiencing, what that looks like. And so I do see it starting to separate until it kind of falls off on its own. I don't see it growing, but
And can
that's
you
an
expand on
example.
this hypergamy word? Because this honestly is the first time I've heard of that word before, so maybe other people aren't familiar with it either.
So hypergamy is essentially dating based on wealth,
Oh,
transactional dating. So, you serve me, I serve you, and we have a purpose, and it's usually typically revolves around money and whatnot,
wow. Okay, so
which
that
I don't
makes a
have
lot
a
of sense.
problem with. I
Yeah.
support it. I
Yeah.
support all various types of dating and relationships,
Yeah.
like polyamory and everything. I just don't believe my perspective at least has never been that one of those strategies will be the key strategy to
Mm,
get you what you want.
right.
And in dating and those conversations, we often see our clients trying to create a strategy, right? And it's like, I would like to free you from the idea that you're ever going to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because let's stop the performance. Do you
Mhm.
want to perform and follow someone else's strategy on how to get what you're looking for? Or are you dating to actually be seen as you? Again, great questions, because you may not want to be seen. You may just want the money, honey, and that's
Right.
fine.
'Cause, I mean, but it's true, but not, I mean, relationships are very complex. Dynamics within the relationships are very complex. People's personal lives are very complex. People's programs from their lifetime are very complex. Like, so how can you have just like one thing to serve?
Exactly.
You can't.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's great when you're exploring dating, is really understand who you are because you might just be the person that just wants the money. Okay. But
Right.
maybe you want like someone that's going to see you, show up for you when you're
Right.
sick, whatever. I don't know. And a
Right.
lot of people don't ask those questions.
So when you're working with people in your role to actually make a match, these are the kinds of things that you have to know, right? Because if you don't know that, you're going to put somebody who really wants to be seen with somebody who really doesn't care to see someone, and then it's not going to work out.
Yeah, exactly. The job as a matchmaker is creating high quality questions, observing our clients, listening to their needs, but also knowing when to kind of challenge their comfort zones a little bit and giving them um, an opportunity to meet someone that may not have been on their list, but just challenges them enough that like they might realize this is actually what they were looking for, right? But I think that's been the greatest experience aside from the relationships that I've built and the connections that I've made and how I've learned about dating and even evolved myself in matchmaking. One of the greatest things about it is the awareness I've adapted to or adopted that quality questions, specific questions are powerful all on their own and how to ask them and when to even weaponize it,
Mm.
right? Like that's something I've been exploring recently is how do I weaponize a high quality question as my own ability to discern whether someone's right for me or not.
Well, and I was just going to ask you too, because like you were talking so much about like the authenticity, but like even in the questions that you ask, what if people don't tell you the truth? Like if they're not being honest or authentic and they're just saying one thing versus another, maybe it's not really what they want, you're not going to be able to match them properly either. Right? So how do you get to the root of that with your questions to make sure they're telling the truth?
Well, again, the good news is you can always guarantee that you'll never have that answer, right? Like you will never really get the truth because the truth is something that develops over time. It
Mm,
develops over consistency, observing whether someone shows up at the same in the same way they said they would, right? So you're never going to get that on that first question. So there's always going to be that risk that has to be taken. However, the smarter or well, the more skilled you become at understanding subconscious tells and behavior, the better you will be at discernment. Because my firm belief is that we all tell on ourselves one way or another. If we are all truly listening, we will hear how someone truly feels about themselves, how they feel about the world, what they think, how if they're going to show up authentically or not. And but when my clients come to me and they talk about, well, these questions like, should I ask about this and that on the first day? I go, look, we, I support you in doing whatever you feel like you need to do. But my personal take on dating is it should be fun. And like, let's first focus on embodiment. Let's focus on the being present, right? Because your body and being present is going to be a greater signal than anything you can do cerebrally. You will pick up on something that doesn't feel right. Even if we consider the fact that oftentimes we are attracted to people's scent, and then you think you like someone based off of like the conversations you've had, they've answered all the questions correctly, right? You're doing video dating, you meet them in person, you're like, something's off. But you don't even realize that there's something in their pheromones that doesn't even click with you biologically. So I personally believe in let's lead first with presence and body and embodiment, but let's have our questions and be prepared to ask the right questions when we need to. And yes, there's questions like, do you expect to have children? Do you want to, right? Like these are important. I ask these questions as a matchmaker. However, there's questions such as like, let's say you're seeing someone again. This is something that I used recently. And he messaged me and he wanted to see me again. And in short, I was not happy with the way the date went, right? But I'm no longer in a position in my own life where I'm gonna make you tell me, or always get into a conversation with me about something that I didn't like, right? So all I said was, well, if we go on this date, how do you imagine it unfolding, the evening unfolding? What do you expect to happen? And so there's no real thing in there that's making him tell me the truth, right? Like that question is not saying like tell me the truth. It's show me what you're imagining for the evening. And then when he started telling me what he was imagining, I was like, I ended up messaging him. I said, "Oh my goodness, you really assume I have such low standards of myself. This is not a match."
Wow. Yeah, so just
So,
that one powerful question gave you information that you needed versus
yeah,
what do you like to do on the weekends and how what kinds of books do you read and yeah.
yeah. I really find it fascinating that if we ask someone to imagine something and we watch how they create it, a lot can be found from just that.
That is great. And I love the three things that you said about this, which is the embodiment of yourself, like that's super important. The being present, right? Because you're going to pick up on those cues and you're going to be able, like if you're in La La Land in your head, you're not going to be able to pick up on anything, right? You have to be present. And then the questions, these powerful questions, not just these like simple, you know what it sounds like to me is like your questions are just like they're so much more strategic versus the questions that are really intended to see if there's a connection like oh we both like this oh you like baseball so do I oh you do this so do I right like and that's where you're kind of getting through all that BS and you're like I don't care about all this stuff I want to know like the better stuff like the juice or the meat of the issue here and that just seems like you're just going straight to the heart of the issue to me. Am
Yeah.
I right on that?
That's how I feel about it, absolutely. And also being someone who I've also dated a lot, right? I'm not just working in the field. I don't want to ask this. I don't care about your favorite color. I really don't care like what you're going to do a year from now because I may not want to even see you tomorrow. So
Yeah.
there's no reason for me to even ask those questions. I want to know how I feel around you, and I want to know if you can keep up with me mentally and my depth and my emotional intelligence, right? Like that's about it. And if we can have fun and have a good time, I believe in this too. When you fall in love, you will make anything work. So even if you originally thought you didn't want children, there's a high probability that that's not going to really become an issue. It doesn't mean that it won't, right? Like it happens. People break up if they don't have those things met. But what I believe is that love will always find a way. It will figure something out. And so again, not my thing to worry about on those first couple of weeks of
Hmm.
dating. We're going to find those out over time. Yeah, let me find out who you really are inside and ask the questions where you don't even know, like, because dating isn't about interrogation. But am I interrogating them? Yes, in a very
Hmm.
strategic, clever way, right?
Hmm.
Let's hope they
Hmm.
never hear about this on this podcast because I've become obsessed with it. Like it's become a hobby of mine where I'm like, okay, I have this agenda and I need this thing to happen, but if I go at it directly, I can't trust it.
Hmm.
So what's the over around under attempt? And
Hmm.
also in dating too, a lot of people, like my friends will call me and they'll be like, I've been doing dinners and stuff like that. And I've got a couple people that I'm dating at once. And I'm trying to figure out, who to pick. And I said, well, you're only like 2 months, 3 months into it. You don't have to pick anyone. But I said, let's find activities, puzzles, things that get your physical body moving, and let's recreate conflict.
Hmm.
Let's find things that create conflict because that's a relationship.
Right.
You are always going to deal with conflict and challenge. So let's expose them because if even if they tell you this is how I deal with conflict, that doesn't mean that's how they deal with it. But we can throw them into an escape room. We can put them in like a puzzle and we can find out how they behave under stress.
I love that. I think about like the Amazing Race and how these couples like interact with each other and it reminds me of and I thought of Escape Room when you said that too because I'm like depending on how that person behaves in that environment is going to give you a lot of information. It's going to give you a ton of clues. But that
Yeah.
makes me wonder too because like something that you've said before is that emotionally intelligent, self-aware, regulated women are often told they're too much. And I'm wondering too, does this come up, right? Maybe for you personally, maybe for other people, like if you are going like the over under around route, like and asking those kinds of questions, I'm guessing there are certain people out there who don't like that and they get annoyed or they whatever.
Absolutely. Part of the reason why I've even developed these questions is because that was always what I was hearing was I was too much or I was this or that, right? I believe that part of the reason why emotionally intelligent people are considered too much is because clarity is uncomfortable for confusion or ambiguity or any of those things, right? So and then it's like, well, people will say, oh, you're too much. But again, I told you I love words. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by too much? Define it. Because why would I want to let you tell me I'm too much? I'm going to try to interpret that based off of my own patterns and pain. Let me ask you, well, what does that mean I'm too much? Like, and if you can't even tell me what you mean by calling me too much, I already know you're not even worth my time because you
Right.
can't even tell me what your definition is. We would never be compatible in the first place because I'm always going to ask you whenever I've learned that whenever I'm confused about something or I'm taking something personally, I try to slow down and I try to ask the other person, well, what do you mean? Because we may all be speaking English in that moment, but we're not. We're speaking foreign languages. Each and every person has their own understanding of what words are, right? Now, the second part of that question you asked me regarding like, when you ask these questions, will you be too much? I have gotten to the point where I said, good, good. I want to make you uncomfortable
Hmm.
because I'm never going to change. I am going to keep being this person of high integrity, high character, high intelligence. I sit there, I think about human behavior, relationships, and whatnot. If you don't like this, you're never going to. So,
Yep.
how about I stop worrying about being rejected and I just accept it, especially because I'm aware that I am emotionally intelligent and deep, and that rejection for me is going to happen more often than it would if I was not. So if I truly have a strong relationship with myself and I love myself and I understand that dating is not about getting something outside of myself, but rather learning about me and also like strengthening myself, then I should be comfortable with you feeling like I'm too much,
Yeah.
not wanting to be around me. Because good riddance, you have filtered yourself out and I don't have to sit here and try to understand it.
Hmm.
I won't be side, I won't have to worry about what's going to happen 3 months from now because I was hiding or performing.
Hmm.
I was trying to make myself shrink myself so that I could fit into your comfort zones.
Hmm.
I have gotten to the point where I've told myself it's just not worth it, you know?
Hmm.
And that's where
Yeah.
again we discuss expansion versus contraction. And
Hmm.
what I've had men who have told me, you can't ask me those questions. And I said, but I just did, What do you mean? I just asked you that question. And again, as a matchmaker, I get offended because I'm like, but I ask those questions daily to people. I don't think you understand who you're talking to,
Hmm.
Like I'm
Yeah.
like, and any other matchmaker, anyone I think even in the dating field has holds themselves with integrity, right? We would say like, no, absolutely not. Whatever a matchmaker and a person of integrity, like dating coach or something is doing in the field is the standard. So anyone that's telling you you're being too much, it's like, you're going to put in more emotional labor with that person. You get to decide if you want to or not, because again, that's still part of relationships too. But I
Yeah.
just think that it's like, let's recognize that when you're emotionally intelligent and you're deep, it's actually the standard. It's not the expectation. People will say like it's the bare minimum, and I'm like, I've realized recently it's not the bare minimum, hun. It is literally a standard. You cannot expect it from everyone, but you do need to take on the role of understanding that you are a leader and no longer apologize for it.
I love that. That is like so inspiring, every word of what you said, because I feel exactly the same way. Because I used to shrink myself. I used to be the one that would be small or not raise or not speak my voice. And I know a lot of people listening probably have done that too. And it's so, so important because here's the other thing. As you were talking, I was thinking about what a waste of time if you are dating someone and they tell you you're too much and you shouldn't be asking these questions or blah 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 or whatever, right? And then you then adjust and amend your behavior to their comfort level. And then you continue to date and you continue to date and you make yourself smaller, 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 smaller. You have wasted all of that time because you could have literally just been like, okay, like this person is telling me that we're not a fit, right? Maybe they have a hard time recognizing that they aren't able to meet me, where I am, and so that they're projecting and saying that I'm too much, and that's fair, that maybe that's possible. Probably is a lot of times the
Really
real
is.
case, the reality. But you could just keep going through each and every one that does that to finally reach the person who would enhance your life, right? Because like you were saying, it's not about you um alone, right? You're in this with somebody else, but they should be there to enhance your life. They're not completing you. They're not making your life something that, you can't achieve. You achieve your happiness, your self-love, like all of that first. And they should be a complement to it, not a they're adding to it. They're not completing it.
Right. Yes. And emotionally available people won't say that your desire for clarity is too much.
Yeah, so when you ask the question like what do you mean or give me some detail or can you explain that? Yeah.
Emotionally available people, emotionally mature, the four pillars of all of those things, the self-aware people, like they're going to say they'll have the conversation with you. And even if it becomes redundant, you'll know when it's becoming redundant because they'll articulate that you've had this conversation before. With patience, they will articulate it.
Mm.
So those are the people that have the capacity, the emotional capacity to continue to build something with.
Mhm.
And you get to decide of what you want to put up with, how much capacity you want a person to have. Because if you're also even self-aware, you may not have a lot of capacity. So you might be okay with someone that also doesn't, right?
Right.
But, as someone who's also dealt with being too much, one of the things that I would tell myself whenever I was feeling lonely or like, because now I'm finally now at that point where it's like, gosh, I really don't even I don't know, there's something that's shifted in me that doesn't really feel lonely anymore, That's the only way I can describe it. But when I was going through these so many phases, I would sit there and I would tell myself like a Rolls Royce doesn't feel lonely just because someone can't afford it. Like
Yeah,
it's not sitting in the
exactly.
showroom complaining.
Yeah.
It's not letting anyone just get in it. Like that doesn't work. Everyone wants to ride a Rolls Royce, but not everyone can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
embrace that you're the Rolls Royce.
Exactly. I love that. Okay. So when you talk about emotional maturity, this is important. What is, other than like somebody being able to sit with the patience and the clarity, are there any other things we need to know to be able to say, hey, I'm going to step out into the dating world. I'm going to, start talking to people, start going out. Is there anything else that's like this is like gold? Like, I know this is a green flag. Somebody is really emotionally mature for you?
That's a really hard one just because it would like I think I'm still also asking myself what that looks like off the top, but I can give you a recent example. Has nothing to do with my actual dating life, okay? But this is where I was like, green flag.
Okay.
I'm at the sushi restaurant and I'm in this like big puffy jacket. It's cold. I got my little beanie with my little thing on. And they're like, they're gonna put me at the bar. The bar is crowded. And so they're like, okay, we have a spot for you. Obviously, it's very tight. I have all my shopping bags. It's Christmas. And there's water on the floor, and I'm talking to the hostess, and I said, "Oh, where can is there a hook back there? Because I have all my stuff, and the floor is wet, so I don't want to put the bags on the ground." And she goes, "Well, you can put it in the cabinet." And I said, "Oh, I have a tendency to forget things. That's probably not the best." Meanwhile, I'm not really focusing on this gentleman in a suit who's kind of like I can see him. He's like rubbing his hands along the wall, right? But I'm not really focused on it. And then he turns to me and he says, "There's actually a hook here." And I said, "Oh, wonderful." So I start to make my way over there, and obviously I was very dramatic about it. I'm like elbowing everyone with like a big furry coat. I'm like, "Sorry, excuse me," and
Yeah.
trying to hang my stuff on the hanger. And so, and then we had like a really lovely conversation. He asked me like, just some really great questions about myself, and then he went about his day. He also, this particular restaurant, you don't have to put a tip on it. It's built in. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you think that they would take an extra tip?" I said, "They'll take money, like I'm sure it won't be a problem." But for me, green flag, right? So
Mhm.
here's where the green flags come in. This man, I don't know him. He was very cute, okay? Is listening to my problems and he's solving them. He doesn't
Mm.
know me. As I move to sit down, he's asking me if he can take my coat. I let him. He hangs it on the chair. He helps me get situated and comfortable. He asks me questions about myself. And not only that, he puts a tip on top of a tab that doesn't even need to be there. He is showing me what his character is like.
Yeah.
And we're not even dating.
Wow. Just the behavior. Wow. I mean, it's like you said at the very beginning, like people will like tell on themselves. They will reveal who they
Yeah.
are.
And I guess, if we deduced it to the green flag is, is someone willing to solve
Yeah.
your little problems? Are they listening to the way you're communicating and saying, like, he created a safe space we didn't even date, but he created a safe space. And yeah,
What a
they will
great
show you
story,
who they are and let them, right? Like,
right?
I hate that Mel Robbins everyone's kind of mad at her about that, but
Me, I am too.
yeah. But to take no out of it, it's like let them though. Like there is truth in that. Let them show you
Hmm.
who they are and stop fighting for them to be somebody different, whether it's who you want them to be, expect them to be, or need them to be. Just stop.
Yeah.
Let them show you who they are time and time and time again. Because oftentimes too, when we go chasing for the solution or the whatever it is that we want from a person, we only entrap ourselves into an attachment that probably should have dissolved naturally if we would have just left it alone.
Hmm. Oh, that's so big. Like the whole just let people be who they are, let them do their things, let them reveal themselves. And then they should let you do the same thing. And then if it's a match, it's a match. If it's not, it's not. Like, why are we trying to stick round pegs in square holes? Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Like, we're not
It's
all
more,
meant for everybody. I'm not for everyone. You're not for everyone, and that's okay.
yeah, and consider it this way too, right? It's like the more that we can recognize that relationships aren't and dating isn't about control, the better we will be at maintaining a healthy relationship. Because anyone who's been in long-term relationships will tell you, you cannot force people to be something, do something, change. And even when you're in long-term relationships and you need your part or there needs to be growth coming from your partner for you to be able to maintain that relationship, it doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, it requires faith. So you need to be practicing these things in dating, right? So Gottman's talk about the pillars of divorce, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling.
Mm,
We ex you don't need to wait to be in a relationship to have those. Explore it now when you're single, explore it when you're dating, explore it when you treat other people with criticism and whether you criticize yourself, right? The more you become aware of when you're criticizing yourself or other people, the easier it's going to be when you start dating to realize you don't want to be with someone that's going to be like that, right? And
yeah.
so you don't need a partner to explore these things just as much as it's going to be like, hey, everyone's going to disappoint you. These people, no one's going to be perfect. So you can't be going looking for red flags immediately. You need to give, this is not the best analogy. It's such an old school one. I don't, you can edit if you don't like it. I get it. Okay. Where they go, give them enough rope to hang themselves.
Hmm.
It's like give people enough space. Like give
Yeah.
the horses a pasture and just let them see what they're gonna do.
Yeah. That's really, really a good visual too. I mean, obviously, we need to just be in a position, and I love this whole thought about like we're not changing people and people are going to disappoint you. And what this all circles back to is what we were originally talking about in the very beginning about how we have these I don't know if it's expectations or stories or illusions about what it should look like, what love should look like, what relationship should look like, what dating should look like. And really, if we kind of peel all that trash away and we just say enough of that, like I'll be me, you be you, we try to grow together and then we can have a relationship, right? It doesn't have to be this I'm gonna I'm gonna tell you all the things that you need to do bad or you need to do better, and you're gonna tell me all the things that I need to do better. We're criticizing each other, we're contempt for each other, all these horrible things. I don't Nothing's gonna last like that. Things don't
Right.
You
Well,
can't sustain that.
one of the things that was a big revelation for me not just as a coach and matchmaker, but because it came from my own personal life where I was like, oh my gosh, I always thought that communication was the key, right? Like it was so important and this and that. And so I became a high level communicator. Then I realized like that was actually destructive to my dating life and my relationships. And then I had to understand, wait, nonverbal communication is actually still communication. So there comes a point where we have to understand when to use what level of
Mm.
communication. Because a nonverbal communication is also going to give us that space to let things breathe, to let people calm down, to let the things kind of resolve itself. And again, one of my favorite statistics from the Gottmans is that roughly now 67% of conflict is repeated and unsolvable. In other words, and that's with healthy relationships, people that have been together forever, right? These problems are going to keep showing up. And so for when I read this statistic, how I figured it out was I was like, oh, so I have to master a high level of indifference because I'm not going to be able to get everything I want because 67% of conflict is unsolvable and repeated in the healthiest and most successful relationships.
Wow. That that is a lot. I mean, 67%. We're almost at 70% there. And I mean, that's just those statistics. Do we have all the information? Probably we don't even, you know? And how often do they update that information, those statistics? And my guess is probably even higher, is my bet.
Mhm.
That's really profound. Thank you so much for sharing that and your perspective. I'd love to ask you um, one just one, I always ask the same question of all my guests as a surprise question, which I will ask you, and I know you'll have fun with this one. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you if there's anything else, like parting words or thoughts that you have for people who are listening, keeping in mind that they may have been deeply wounded, deeply hurt. They want to be in a relationship. We know we need to check into why we want to be in that relationship, but any like final thoughts or advice that you would give?
Hmm. I'm gonna take a moment to think about this one for a second.
Okay.
Um, for those that have experienced abuse and trauma, I think that your greatest act of courage is to love again,
Mm.
because otherwise we give the control to those who have hurt us. And so the only way to truly experience freedom is to never let our past or those narratives dictate how we live our lives. So when we recognize love to be the a place for freedom and not just attachment, we experience what it's like to win through resilience. In other words, it's
Wow.
like I think that it's essential. And I think that for those who have made it through the other side, who've loved again and found a healthy relationship, I think might agree that those voices are stronger than the ones that didn't try again and get back up on that horse, because
Yeah.
your voice needs to be heard, your resilience needs to be seen by others. When you love again, it's not just about finding a relationship, it's about the human spirit and perseverance. And right now is a time that we all need that. And we all need to hear those stories about um, the human spirit winning through all
Mm.
adversity. And you become a beacon of that light and hope and faith for the rest of society who's also struggling, even if it's not just about love, right? Like, or well, relationships. So you aren't just doing it for yourself, you're doing it and it's going to heal the world.
That was so beautiful. Like, I'm gonna like transcribe that and send it to you. It is beautiful. Thank you so much. You are such a beautiful person inside and out. You are so intelligent. You're hilarious. Um, Before we tell everybody where to find you and all of that, I just want to extend my utmost gratitude to you for sharing all of this and being present and giving your light to the world. I just am so grateful. But my final question, that is a surprise question, is tell us. Something about you that not a lot of people know. Now, people like in your little circle might know, but like general public, maybe people don't know. Something interesting, quirky, unusual, something that happened to you, anything that you feel like you could share.
You know, the first one I thought of right now is because you know this about me that I love consciousness, I love meditating, I love all those things. The first thing I thought about was A, I love humpback whales, and then B, the meditation that I had with humpback whales where I telepathically communicated with my dad.
I love this. Can you would you be willing to share that?
Yeah, okay, I love this story. And this is also why I believe in love as a universal force, right? So I'm years now into my meditation practices, but I was sitting there and I love to imagine swimming with humpback whales. And so I'm swimming with them and I'm doing my thing. And then all of a sudden, like, I start thinking about everyone in my life. Even if right now our relationship's complicated, right? And I'm sending everyone love. And I just start getting really emotional. Like I'm getting filled with so much love and I am like crying. And, the reason why I love humpback whales is because of echolocation and it spreads very far. And they're the reason why I use them as a tool to practice telepathy. So every time I'm meditating with whales, I believe I'm telepathically communicating, right? And so here
Mhm.
I am spreading all this love, getting emotional. And my dad calls me in the middle of this meditation. And I'm like, I usually put my phone on Do Not Disturb. It's like 12 a.m., I'm like, oh my gosh, is everything okay? So I pick up and I'm like pulled out of my meditation and I'm like, hello. And he's like, Tina, like, is everything okay? He's like, I gotta tell you something. Hello? And I was like, what is going on, man? Are you okay? He's like, Tina, no, no, I gotta tell you something. I said, Dad, I need you to tell me, are you okay? He said, yeah, 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 I'm fine. He goes, okay. He goes, so I felt something touch my nose, and then I heard, I love you. And I was like, okay. He's like, I got up. I thought it was the cat. I turned on all the lights. The doors were closed. Nothing was in the room. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it flicked my nose and I heard a whisper in my ear and it said, I love you. And I go, and he goes, and you said when weird things happen to call you. And he doesn't always call me when weird things happen. I said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, that's what I'm doing now. And I was like, that is so wild because I was actually meditating with the whales and I was sending love to everyone and telling everyone I love them. Mind you, my dad lives 60 miles away, right? And he goes, well, I got your message.
I got the message. Message received. Your dad sounds adorable.
He is, and he supports me like, because I get like ghosts and things like that. My
Mhm.
dad will sit there and he'll see it and he's just like, you're just so weird, kid, like I don't know what it is about you. You're so weird.
I love it.
Like
Thank
really
you.
lucky that I've had that support.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Well, tell everybody if they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is I am Tina Joy. I'm Tina Joy. I'm gonna be eventually I do have an account that's kind of just for matchmaking. And I'm gonna be building on that again. So if you find me at I am Tina Joy, also know that I do comedy and I am a working actress and I
Mhm.
also work for TikTok brands. I'm not just a brain. I'm also a clown, so don't be embarrassed. I can still guide you through your relationships, even if,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
acting like a dog. Gotta let it out somewhere.
Well, your accounts are entertaining to me. I follow you on all the socials, and so it's always really fun to see you. So please go out and follow Tina, find her, and connect with her if you need her support. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.